What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we've got a community update for Battlefield 6, and I just wanted to kind of go through the highlights of this and share my thoughts. And also I realized I haven't really shared any opinions yet on Season 4, I've just been covering the gun guides and getting the information out for you guys. So just quick, right at the front here, I'm really enjoying Coral Reef. I love this map. In fact, this is probably one of my favorite maps in the game now. It's just got really nice variety of engagement types and engagement distances. We got the naval combat mixed in there. My only one gripe with this, I guess, is some conquest matches can feel a little bit boring as somebody that prefers playing infantry. Sometimes it can just feel like you're hunting around an empty map trying to find the odd engagement here or there, and most people are just hanging out in vehicles fighting each other. But that's not in every lobby I play on, it's just some lobbies have been like that. So part of me is thinking it would be nice to have a higher player count in Conquest for that, but outside of that, loving the map, enjoying the new guns as well so far, especially the Broad 3, really like that one. So I do think the season's off to a good start, but let's get into this community update, including a Q&A, although I'm not going to go through too much of the Q&A since so many of the answers were basically non-answer PR talk that didn't really actually provide any new information. So let's dive into the post here, and the first topic they talk about is custom lobbies and spectator mode, which are arriving in Season 4 Phase 2, which is coming on August 18th, and that's when we're also getting Wake Island and the Top Gun crossover. But with these custom lobbies, essentially you'll have more direct control over setting up a match. So you'll be able to assign players to specific teams, adjust certain match settings, organize private sessions or community tournaments, and they're also adding spectator mode in there so you can follow the action. Now they do say initially it's only going to be supporting Battle Royale quads as well as Conquest, but they do have additional modes planned in future updates. And I feel like those are going to be some nice additions to the game. I think most people probably aren't going to be interacting with that at all, but it's just like a nice to have feature that will round things out a little bit better. Next up, we're getting our first iteration of proximity chat coming with Season 4 Phase 3. However, that will only be available in Battle Royale to start with, and then eventually down the road it will be coming to multiplayer. They didn't give a specific date on that. As for maps, they once again stated we are getting 3 maps in Season 5 rather than the usual 2 maps that we have been getting. So it's nice to see they're going to be ramping that up a little bit. And while we don't know exactly which maps these are, a lot of people are speculating based on this teaser image that this is the Welcome to Las Vegas sign, and we are going to be getting a map in Vegas. And I see where people are coming from with that, so perhaps that's going to be the case. In either case, what they did share here is one of the maps is going to be focused more closely on infantry combat, while the other 2 are going to be more larger scale combined arms warfare maps. And that sounds excellent to me. I'm really looking forward to seeing these, and I'm curious to see if any of them are going to be like remakes or reimagined like we saw with Goldmud as well as Wake Island. Time will tell on that, but they also mentioned here, in addition to those maps, later in Season 5, we are going to be getting the reworks of Blackwell Fields and New Sobek City. They've been making adjustments to those maps since there's been a lot of criticism about those maps since they launched. So I am curious to see what they end up doing with those as well. And now let's get into the part that I was most interested in. This is an update on the server browser and matchmaking. And with the server browser, this is coming in Season 5, as we've expected. And I don't know if this has been confirmed in the past, but this is the first time I can recall seeing this at least. Apparently, the server browser, unfortunately, isn't coming at the launch of Season 5. It's coming with the Phase 3 update in Season 5. So that means probably late November, possibly December is when we should be expecting that. So that is a little bit unfortunate that we still got quite a long time to wait for that. But we did get a teaser image here of what this is going to look like in the interface. Keeping in mind, this is a work in progress, and they do say that this is subject to change. But this is pretty much what I'd expect out of a server browser here in the game, where you can tab between official servers, verified servers, custom servers, and experiences. And with this, they did mention in a Q&A in the past that they are planning for official servers to be easy to identify, support full progression, and remain supported by regular matchmaking. That's the key. So apparently, the plan is to have this tied in with regular matchmaking. So if I just search for a Conquest game using the current matchmaking system, it does have the potential to put me into one of these servers that's also available on the server browser. So I could join via matchmaking, or I could join manually via the server browser. And I'm really hoping that's still in the plans. They didn't mention anything about that in this particular update as far as I can see. But they did also mention here they're exploring how server browser can support a more persistent match flow, make it easier to remain with other players between rounds, and complement the existing matchmaking experience. And that actually has me a little bit nervous that they say they're exploring how that could do that instead of just saying it will be persistent. To me, it almost sounds like it's not actually going to be the just direct persistent lobbies from one game to the next that we would expect to see out of a server browser, and instead they're exploring some other kind of convoluted system that doesn't really give us what we want. Maybe I'm just being a little too cynical here though, I don't know. It's just something that stood out to me with that wording. But then on top of that, they did also mention here that matchmaking remains one of their most frequently discussed areas within the community, particularly around match quality and consistency, and their teams are investigating concerns such as matches starting or backfilling with too many bots, significant differences in ticket counts, and players being placed in high-ping matches. They say these concerns involve several interconnected systems, and once they have clear findings to share, they plan to publish a dedicated update outlining what their investigation has identified and how they intend to improve the experience. And for me, this is still my #1 issue that I have with the game. It's not a big issue for me right now, like shortly after a season launches, I don't really run into this nearly as much, presumably because we get a spike in player count, so lobbies just fill up more quickly, and there's less chance of running into bots. But when we get to more of the down times where that initial season hype kind of falls off a bit, that's when I start running into so many lobbies where it's at least initially populated very, very heavily with bots. And oftentimes it's also really lopsided, so there's way more bots on one team than the other, and that often just sets the tone for the rest of the match. And then even if it does fill up with real players, you end up fighting from behind, or if you're on the other team, you end up fighting with such a massive advantage and massive lead that you didn't really earn because you were just killing bots in the process. And that has really taken away from the experience for me. And then on top of that, with the lack of persistent lobbies, it sucks that you do stick it out through a match, it finally fills up with real players, you've got a nice full lobby of real players, and it breaks it all up and it puts you into a different match that may also be full of bots, and you have to repeat that process. And that just makes me not want to play the game when that happens, because I'm there to play PvP against real players. If the odd spot is filled up with a bot, cool, I can live with that, but when more than half the match in some cases are filled up with bots, I just don't want to play that. I'd go play a single player game if I wanted that. So it is nice to see that they're addressing this at least, but I feel like this issue has been very prevalent for months and months now, and it's been slowly pushing me away from wanting to play the game outside of those initial hype periods after the launch of a season. And so now we have to wait for them to investigate and then publish what their investigation shows, and then they're going to start working on adjustments. Then they probably have to test that in labs, and then eventually it'll get added to the game, and hopefully these issues will be fixed. So I'm not holding my breath on that. I have no idea when we're going to be seeing adjustments to this. It is unfortunate that it's taken them this long to just acknowledge the issue in the first place, unless I missed something previously where they have acknowledged this. But once again, I'm just seeing a very similar theme here. And I guess it's fairly normal with Battlefield, where they do end up getting to a lot of the complaints and the issues with the game, but it just takes time. And that can, of course, be frustrating. It was the same story with this server browser. We've been begging for it since the beta of the game, and we're finally going to be getting it more than a year after release. Either way, the next thing they brought up here is Platoons. These are on track for Season 5, Phase 3, and that'll be a nice quality of life addition to the game as well. I am looking forward to having that available. Then multiplayer leaderboards are on track for the launch of Season 5, and that's nice to see. Again, something that for many players they don't really care about at all, but for others this is going to be a big deal, and I'm just glad that they're continuing to round out the game, even though many of these features are things that are often just expected with the launch of a game, rather than many seasons in post-launch. And then they also have a little section here on multiplayer ranked, but basically they're just saying that they are currently working on it. It is progressing. They don't have a release date on this though. And they're still looking into the right time to introduce this. So it looks like that's not coming anytime in the near future at least. Otherwise, we likely would have a date nailed down. And then finally, before they get into the Q&A section here, they did have a little section just talking about weapon, vehicle, and gadget balance, specifically after the gunplay update from Phase 3 Season 3 that we got, where they introduced limb multipliers and made several other adjustments as well to like velocity and drag coefficient, recoil, spread. And with this, they basically said their internal data is showing that there are more situations where somebody that starts the fight ends up taking damage, and that there's more time to react to being shot at in the game, and the time to die is slowed down nicely from this, which is expected, of course. And it was largely the big reason they brought a lot of these changes in, was to slow that pace of the time to kill down a bit, especially at longer ranges. And they did mention, of course, they are continuing to monitor things, and they will still be making adjustments as needed going forward. And then they also mentioned they are still reviewing vehicle combat and the effectiveness of gadgets, including how these systems interact with infantry play. And I'm very curious to see what ends up coming of this, because this is an area where I do feel like they made some improvements, but they also set some things back in certain ways. For me, as somebody that's more of an infantry guy, so of course there is a bias present there. I am a little bit annoyed still with how they handled the automatic health regeneration on vehicles. I still think they took that way overboard, and it's really frustrating that I can spend a bunch of time and ammo, as an engineer for instance, actively trying to take out a vehicle only for them to back out of my line of sight for 15 seconds, and in doing so, it completely canceled out all that time, effort, and ammo that I spent trying to deal damage and destroy them. And they didn't even have to get out of the vehicle and use a repair torch, or have a teammate use a repair torch, or do what they did in Battlefield 1, for instance, where they can heal from inside the vehicle, but in doing so, they're a bit of a sitting duck because they can't move at the same time. Something like that I'd be totally fine with. Either way, they just said that they're looking into all of this sort of stuff and how it all interacts together. For me, I hope that's an area that they're really taking a look at, is that health regeneration. But overall, that's pretty much it for all of the important information from this community update. Again, there was a Q&A as well, and I will leave a link to it down below if you are curious and want to check it out, but after skimming through it all, I wasn't really seeing any new information that they didn't already cover here or that they haven't already covered in the past. And a lot of it was sort of PR talk where they don't really answer the question that was asked. So this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, how are you feeling about Season 4 so far for anybody that has been playing Season 4? And second, what are your thoughts on the information that we got today in this community update? Most importantly, with the server browser not coming until toward the end of Season 5. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.